Paranormal M is your safe place for unsafe stories. Each chilling tale pulls you deeper into a reality we don't understand, but can't deny. Subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the next encounter. Odd experience I had recently is keeping me up at night. So recently I visited Seattle, and I had something really odd happen, and it's eating at me. So I'm coming on here to see if anybody has any ideas what could have caused it. I apologize for such a long read, but I appreciate any of you who will listen and share ideas. Me and my mom took a girls' trip to Seattle. I had a concert to attend there. We stayed in downtown area the whole time there. On day 3, I think of being there, we went to dinner. Then later that night at sundown, went to West Point Lighthouse in Discovery Park. The drive to the spot was so pretty, lots of trees, and my mom points out a cemetery we drove by. Where I live, we're right by a cemetery, and I enjoyed going on walks there. I mentioned how cool it was that they had true headstones, instead of just the cement slabs in the grass. We get to the lighthouse, and we had a really good time. The beach was gorgeous. Found a small clamshell, and I pocketed it. Since where I'm from, we don't have beaches, and I was excited to have found one in perfect shape. We initially were going to stop at the cemetery before going back, but it was dark and pretty chilly, so we decided not to. We head back probably around 10 p.m. and get back to where we were staying at maybe 10:30 or 10:45. I kind of lounge around editing some pictures I took in my camera, listening to music on the balcony, then showering. Once I'm done with all of that, it's around 12 or 1 a.m. I go into bed, and our room we stayed at had one bed. I slept on the right side, my mom on the left. As I'm laying down, I recall seeing a robe hanging on the door and laughing to myself at how it looked like a person of some sort. And I also remember listening really hard to the air conditioning sounds. As a kid, and still now sometimes, when I'm tired and there's a fan or AC on, it starts to sound like something like radio static, with voices hidden somewhere inside of it. It wasn't scary, I just remember trying to listen in and determine where the AC vent was, thinking about how I've heard it before. I fall asleep really fast from what I can recall. I kept having really weird dreams that I don't remember very well. The whole time I was there leading up to this event, I had really weird, vivid dreams. Some of them were a little stressful, but nothing scary or alarming. Anyways, the last and only really part of this dream I remember was that I was in a room that was in like green and purple lights there. There were all these people I couldn't make out standing around me talking to me. I don't know what they were saying or if I said anything back. The moments in between the dream and waking are really hard to recall. The best I can explain this is I'm suddenly sitting up in bed and something is coming at me. My eyes adjust and my mom's holding onto my shoulders, trying to calm me down. I'm freaking out and shaking. My mom is frightened as well. And I remember reaching and turning on the lamp, and I keep focusing on the main door going out into the kitchen and living area. My mom's asking me to try to figure out what happened. I asked her if I yelled, and she said yeah. She told me that she woke up to me sitting up in the bed, almost on my knees. I was mumbling and sounded very afraid. She lightly grabs my shoulder to try and wake me up and to let me know it's okay. I yell at her to stop. Neither of us remember quite what happened after, but from my memory, I thought I was pushing her away from me, because whatever was coming at me in my dream, I thought she was it. And as I'm trying to calm down, my mom asks if she can get me some water. I nod and she starts to get me some, and she announces it and goes to the restroom first. She takes a while. I start to get really nervous. It comes out and basically falls into the floor, and I freak out, stand up, walking to the kitchen as she gets up and lays on the bed, saying that she needs a minute. And for context, I've always had really vivid dreams, sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming. It runs my dad's side of the family, it seems, as he, my grandma, and aunt all have similar experiences. In many of my dreams like this, after being aware that I'm dreaming, I start to think I'm finally awake and that I've returned to normal. Then something just slightly unusual happens. The second I clock it, something really bad happens. This felt like one of those unusual things, and it caused me to panic. I refused to go in the room where she was for a moment, and I was standing by my phone that I left charging in the kitchen. I told her I wanted to get someone, that I needed to get someone, and then finally that I was scared and I wanted to call my dad. She told me she was okay, and I didn't call him at that moment. I end up back in the room with her, and I'm shaking and crying uncontrollably. Eventually, I call my dad at 2 a.m., me and my mom telling him what happened, and he helps me calm down a bit. He suggests we take a walk or go down into the lobby. I tell them that I needed to call him because I needed to make sure it was real, and I wasn't asleep still. Probably 45 minutes later, we hang up and me and my mom sit at the kitchen table. I absolutely just can't calm down. The main room of the hotel felt so wrong, like someone was in it. My head feels constant pressure and my heart feels like it's pounding out of my chest. But when my mom feels it, she says it's beating normally. I'm in a constant state of fight or flight. I just have the strongest feeling of I need to get out of here. Now, I've had some really messed up dream situations like this, but I've never, and I mean never, had a reaction how I did this night. Eventually, we leave the building, drive to a gas station to get a Gatorade and fresh air. And the second I'm out of the building, the parking garage, I was able to calm down mostly. The feeling I felt being in that room was what I can only imagine is the sensation of impending doom. I've heard people talk about that feeling. I've never felt it before, till that night. And I have no other way to describe how I felt besides that if I stayed in that room, something awful would happen. The feeling in my chest was so heavy I thought I was having a medical emergency or something, which wouldn't make sense. I'm a teen and I'm very physically healthy. Me and my mom talked about it in the car. Didn't end up back in the hotel until probably 4 a.m. Didn't sleep until the sun came up around 6. My theory was that I picked up on something at the cemetery. If you don't believe in that kind of thing, I don't blame you. But my family has so many stories of things like this. Picking up on something and it just attaches. The shell I took from the beach, I returned it a couple of days later hoping it would make me feel better. And initially it did, but that night I wasn't able to sleep until the sun came up again. I felt so anxious. I am home now and hadn't had anything like that happen again. I'm really not sure what happened or what caused such a reaction from me. If you read to the end or have any ideas or similar experiences, please share them. I hope to never experience such a thing again. But the curiosity is getting to me, wanting to know why. If anybody has any further questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Side note. My mom believes the way she reacted falling on the floor was like a shock-like reaction. Because yeah, I'd be in shock too, waking up to somebody yelling and freaking out, but the only thing weirding me out is she stayed in the room with me right after for a good 4 or 5 minutes before going to get me water. The second she steps out into the main room is when she felt off. She said she felt clammy and cold and lightheaded. And my mom doesn't believe in ghosts. She's a very logical person. After this event took place, she said she felt really off being alone in the hotel when I was at my concert. She said maybe it's simply because of what happened, and I'm sure it's very possible for both of those ideas to be true. But just the timing of it is so odd. I felt bad about that area of the hotel, and the second she steps into it, she reacts that way. We talked about it more after coming home. She said she had also had very weird dreams in that hotel, and that she couldn't ever really rest being there. One last weird thing. Both my dad and my best friend who I told about the situation started having weird experiences. My dad picked us up from the airport, talking about how he fell into a funk, and just felt really awful for the next 3 or 4 days after that. My best friend starts telling me a few nights in a row how she can't sleep and how she feels anxious, saying she's been crying and doesn't know what to do. Maybe everything is just a weird coincidence, but it feels unlikely to me. Queen Mary encounter. I worked a Halloween photo event on the Queen Mary last October. When we took breaks, we would use the restroom on the third floor near the front lobby. Once, instead of going right away after using the restroom, I went for a walk. There was this really long hallway with tons of doors. I have no idea what the rooms were for, maybe old passenger rooms or crew quarters. And as I walked, I noticed a shadow at the end of the hall. I initially thought it might be somebody turning a corner or a flickering light, but there was no one, and it started to look as though the shadow was moving, slowly coming toward me. I just stood for a moment trying to process what I was seeing. It was not making any noise, and nothing else was moving. It scared me enough that I turned and left, and after that I never went exploring the halls again, and just used the bathroom and went back to work. I have no idea what it was. Maybe there's a logical reason, maybe not, but I've heard other people say strange things happen on that ship, so I thought I'd pass it on. There's someone on my property, and I think they've been for years. I, a 20-year-old female, I've lived in my house since 2012, so about 13 years. The house is owned by my grandfather. We've been renting from him since we moved in. The house was built in the 80s. It's been rented by many tenants over the years. It's made up of 3 different subunits. One large unit on the top floor with 2 basement suites. We started renting one of the subunits about 7 years ago, and I've been in the bedroom ever since. And something about that subunit is just weird. When I started staying in it, I got absolutely terrible night terrors. I was 13 and paralyzed every night for weeks. Specifically, there were 2 humanoid figures I would see over and over again. A younger middle-aged man in a white t-shirt and black pants, but with no discernible head, and a slender middle-aged woman with long black hair. It started as just sleep paralysis, but over the last year it's gotten bizarre. We put up security cameras after a break-in and got multiple videos of the same man standing in our garden, staring at my window for hours. Then the camera started breaking. Would just fall off the wall it was mounted on, and at the same time I'm hearing loud knocking and banging on my window. Our doorbell rings by itself. My dog is terrified to go outside. And small things, like bowls, forks, and spoons and pens have been going missing. Last night, though, it kind of all came to a head. It was about 12:30 a.m. While trying to fall asleep, I heard my bedroom door open. I was on my side, facing away from my door. I felt a sudden wave of terror, like being watched. It washed over me. I heard someone breathing like they were standing next to my bed watching me for an hour. I was blinking and moving my fingers, and I was, not having sleep paralysis. I don't know if I'm going crazy or if these are the old tenants, but whoever or whatever is in my house has started getting more and more known. I've had guests over that hear the noises, so it's not just a me and my family thing. I'm trying to get the camera footage from my dad, but he's out of the country and rather eccentric, so I don't have a lot of hope on that end. But I'll comment if I can get it. Something didn't feel right. I should have listened to my gut. I do ghost hunting every now and then, for my channel. I would say I'm more of a casual ghost hunter. I usually just explore abandoned buildings, but sometimes I like to switch it up. Up until a few weeks ago. I used to just run the spirit box, sometimes an ENF meter, and most I would ever do is the Estes method. A few months ago I've been wanting to get a little bit more serious with it, so I got a REM pod and cat balls and dowsing rods and a pendulum for Christmas. I went hunting a few spots over the course of the last few months, leading up until 2 weeks ago. I did an investigation at my school last October 2024. Wanted to try again with all my equipment and new ideas. My friend knows how to do seances and the spiritual stuff, so I let her hold a seance in the video along with a tarot reading in a place of her choice. We got some entities named the Looking Man, the Bad Man, Steve, Rachel, and a few other off names. They said they wanted my friend to go to the football field at the bottom of the field alone. Said that they were going to wrap him as a gift for Satan. Then we left, and 2 weeks later we went to do the part 3 video. We immediately started in the tunnels of the school after getting special access. The answers weren't that bad, so we moved upstairs. Big mistake. We were investigating for a few minutes and we weren't getting much, so we started a trigger event. The spirits loved it. Then it all went wrong. Started getting really bad chest pain, and I'm only 17 and have no medical history of that. Felt like something was punching me in the ribs every minute. I couldn't deal with it anymore and left. We went to another room and it kept happening, and the answers started getting more violent. A spirit saying it's sorry, and all the answers were leading to something being in power and trying to bring us all back to the field for Satan. We took a 2-hour break, and after that until dawn. Then headed to the cemetery for a seance. The Looking Man apparently wanted inner circle, so we left it. Didn't listen to the one entity rule, and they all came in. Everybody working for him, and he was instructing them to do something to us. We all started getting really sharp back pain and left. We really were all just feeling off, so we wanted to finish off the video. Went back to the field, held a seance open to anything and everything. We immediately started getting weird answers and threats and insults until a girl in our team started screaming in pain as we tried to end the seance. Then starts vomiting everywhere. There were scratches on her back, and we all felt a huge shift in the presence. We all headed up and left. Don't know what could possibly be down in the high school football field, but it ain't friendly. I have seen the same man throughout my life, and he never ages. I remember seeing a bald older white man wearing 40s or 50s clothing. It was often when I was a child. He always scared me, even though we've never interacted, as far as I can remember. It's hard to explain, but he looks like a sideshow clown without a costume or makeup. He also had a pear-shaped body, thick dark eyebrows, and thick dark eyelashes. I've seen him seemingly randomly all my life, and I always get a severe uneasy vibe when it happens. I'm 42 now. Still, sometimes I see him. Up until last week, the last time I saw him, he was walking on the sidewalk across the street on a busy street I drive down frequently to get home. He stopped walking and looked at me blankly as I drove by. This was a few years ago. I've seen him up close, and we have stood next to each other once at a bus station by my house, which was one of the most frightening moments of my life, and nothing even happened. And from far away, I always feel intense bottomless dread when I see him. Last week, I'm 100+ miles away from home at a friend's house. We were scrolling YouTube on my friend's TV, and I was half paying attention while playing a game on my phone. I glance up, and as a YouTube video cover image scrolls by, there's a line drawing of the man I see. He's facing the viewer. It's a simple drawing, but very clearly him. My friend kept scrolling, and I didn't feel comfortable sharing the story. I only told my best friend the story, so I didn't ask my friend to go back. I was also honestly shocked and freaked out and didn't want to see him again. I know this sounds wild, and I know it sounds like this man hoax thing, but any thoughts on this or any input? I'd also like to say that, I work with death professionally, and I am a medium for what it's worth, but I've never experienced something else like this in my life. Old lady in red gown with white dots. So my mother-in-law died almost a month ago. It was a horrible process. She fought cancer for 2 years. I won't go into detail about respect for her and my girlfriend. Her process is not a horror story, but something that happened after that was really off. I'm only sharing this part to add context to the old lady in the red gown. Or as they put it multiple times, gone. I don't know what that is. I feel it may be relevant. After my mother-in-law passed away, I could still feel her for a week or so. Didn't actually see her directly, more like when you see something out of the corner of your eye. Nor did I hear her, more of a feeling that she was there, if that makes sense. It wasn't scary at all, and my theory is she was just watching over her family, as she did her entire life. Just happened to feel that she was there. Again, that's not the scary part. But maybe a couple days after I stopped feeling her presence. I was leaving my girlfriend's house when I turned on my car lights. I saw a really old fat lady in a large red gown with white dots, red curly hair, just standing there in a neighbor's parking space watching me. When I looked again, she wasn't there anymore. That wasn't my mother-in-law. Felt totally different to her and looked nothing like her. But I find the timing really odd. My theory is that if I was still as sensitive as in feeling paranormal stuff, casually saw her, she was not a friendly encounter and I truly felt fear. Never saw her again. I don't want to add, I'm not the sensitive person who sees dead people or anything. Those 2 sightings are 2 of the few, probably less than 5, sightings I've had in my life. Nothing paranormal has happened since either. And though not relevant at all, I just want to express how amazing of a woman and a mother and mother-in-law sister was my mother-in-law. And I hope she found peace. I'll take care of her daughter for her as long as I can. Screech in the night. So I just want to preface this by saying I'm fairly skeptical when it comes to spooky and paranormal situations. I do think it's fun to speculate, and I'm open to the possibility, but I'll usually rationalize it in my brain rather than assume ghosts, But this really spooked me out, and I've never really been able to come up with a proper explanation. One night about 4 years ago, me and my friend were texting. Neither of us could sleep, so we decided we'd just meet up and hang out for a bit instead of sitting bored in bed. It was about 3 or 4 a.m., so I asked him to stay on a phone call with me while we walked. Everything was going all good until I heard this sound that made my heart fall out of my ass. A screech. I'm talking guttural. It was like a mix between human and animal. Heard my friend over the phone in a terrified whisper. Jesus Christ, you hear that? It's right beside me. And it really sounded like it was a mere foot away. I could hear it through the phone and in real life. And now we were fairly far apart, just under half a mile according to maps. So I reckon this had to be a loud scream for me to be able to hear it so clear from where I was. We both stayed dead silent, just listening. That's when the sound started to fade from over the phone and got louder on my end, moving toward me. And it was moving fast. Sounded like it was going overhead, then just faded off into the distance. Not once did the screech stop for any sort of breath or break, just constant until it faded. I'd say it went on for at least 2 minutes, but my memory's a bit hazy, so I can't remember exactly. I do live in a small town in the north of Ireland. Spent a fair bit of my childhood out in the countryside, so I'm fairly versed in weird animal sounds in the night. But this was nothing like I've ever heard in my life. Can't really accurately describe just how loud and shrill the sound was. It wasn't a fox, an owl, or any bird I know. It might have been some kind of bird, given how it seemed to fly overhead, but nothing native here makes a sound like that as far as I know. There's not a real rich history of creatures or cryptids here, that I'm aware of anyway. But I did have the idea if it was some sort of cryptid, maybe a banshee. The screech adds up, but neither of us knew anything that died after it happened. Which is like the whole point of a banshee, so I really don't know. Freaked the shit out of both of us, though. Same friend had a seemingly haunted house too, and I only experienced it one time. Heard chairs moving and the cutlery drawers opening and closing in his kitchen downstairs. The only other person in the house was his sleeping mother, who we could literally hear snoring in the room next to us, so definitely couldn't have been her. Someone explain, please. The first experience I've had took place in an old town in England. It's called Stratford. It's upon Avon, in which my family and I were visiting on holiday. On one of the days we were walking, spotted an old museum called Sheev's House. We walked in and instantly felt something off or creepy about the place. It was extremely old and had loads of wax figures dotted around. Anyway, while we were exploring the museum, me and my dad and sister went ahead leaving my mom in a room by herself. This is where it gets weird. My mom reported having her jumper pulled aggressively from behind while she was reading an article. She turned around thinking it was me or my sister messing around, but to her surprise, there was not a single person in the room. She was confused, and after telling us about what had happened, my dad spoke to the owner of the place, in which he casually responded, "Oh, and that would be Lee." The owner explained Lee was one of the many people that haunted the museum, and he liked to grab attractive women during his life and had followed suit as spirit. He also showed us a file that read that it was Lee's anniversary of death, and that he's usually most active at this time. He then went on to show us many files of ghost hunters that had explored the place, and also showed us short clips of documentaries that had been filmed in there. If you search up Sheev's House, it's got a long documented list as one of the most haunted buildings in England. The owner also ran ghost tours at night, which me and my dad attended but didn't see anything. Anyway, my mom's convinced that her jumper was pulled, and the fact the building is known for being haunted is undoubtedly strange. This next experience is even more creepy. Coming back from a vacation in the south of France, I guess, my family and I stopped at an old sort of family-run hotel place as we were driving and needed to split up the journey. I'm not sure what to call it. It wasn't a hotel as such, but almost like a big house which you could rent a room in. The family cooked for us, and although the building was old, nothing seemed too off about it. Anyway, me and my sister went to sleep in one room and my parents were in the other, and in the middle of the night I heard a smash come from their room. I remember being scared, went back to sleep not daring to investigate. In my morning, my parents were freaked out. They told us that in the night they could constantly hear footsteps next to them and floorboards creaking. I then found out that the smash I heard the night before was the light bulb, and how that had happened freaked me out more than anything. Left in my parents' room by the owners, there was a bat with a bit of a string on it and a ball at the end attached to the string. An old-fashioned kid's toy, basically, where you repeatedly hit the ball back and forth. But anyway, my mom had told me after she woke up to the light bulb smashing, the bat and ball had moved onto the bed from its original position. It was under where the light bulb was, surrounded by glass. My parents spoke to the owners of the house same morning. They were acting strange, being very quick to shut off the conversation and change the topic. I'll keep this last experience short. A couple of years ago, my dad and I went skiing in Italy, stayed at an old hotel which was previously on war grounds. I remember coming back one night and going to the toilet to find the emergency string in the shower swaying rapidly side to side. I called out for my dad to come and see it, and instantly stopped in front of my eyes. At the same hotel, they had a sauna in the basement. The man behind the desk sort of led me into the basement to use it. I was the only person in the sauna. Once I was done, I tried to leave the basement, but the door was locked. I tried to call my dad to let me in the basement door, but had no service. And after a while, my dad and the guy behind the desk came to look for me, and they simply opened the door as if it wasn't locked. I then said that it was locked and I couldn't get out, and the man behind the desk looked at me confused and pleaded that it wasn't. How do you explain this stuff other than ghosts must be real? Everybody I tell hears me out, but naturally takes it with a pinch of salt and tries to somehow find an explanation, even though there is no rational one. Even though I've never seen a ghost with my eyes, I can't deny their existence. Old lady, super weird encounter. So I live in a really old town, like a town from the old world, like from around 3000 BC. There's lots of history and old monuments and all that stuff. There's museums and etc. You get my point. I've never felt like it was haunted or cryptid-prone compared to similar towns on the continent. But one day I went to a sleepover at a friend's house. He lived outside my town in a little rural village, and we were just playing in the woods and saw something weird as fuck. We saw a big snake entering a chicken coop from far away. When I mean big, I mean fucking huge and wide, reticulated snake. There's not even species that big around here. So me and my dumb friend, both like 9 years old at the time, thought, let's fucking check it out. What the fuck is that? Must be an anaconda or a basilisk, we thought. So when we get close, there is no snake visible there. Only an angry old lady. She was killing some chickens like bare hands, twisting their necks. We literally started shouting, get out of there, and there's a big snake. She must have entered the little house where chickens spend the night, and she might be killing her chickens and eating them. Ma'am, please get out of there, it's dangerous. She peeked inside the coop like all nonchalantly and just said, there's not any snake here, you must be seeing things. Go back to play, boys. I didn't believe her, so went inside to peek also. And there was nothing there, just feathers everywhere and little drops of blood. I felt so uneasy while I was passing around her to get out. She smelled weird as hell. When I was on the outside, she just said, see, no snake here. And she just grinned at us while we were backing out, like full eye contact threatening grin. I didn't think much of it, but when we're safe, my friend told me he never seen that lady before. And keep in mind, there's like 10 people living in that little village. He made a point that had escaped my thoughts. She was saying all the S's in the word super scary, like in a sibilance kind of way. Me and my friend told their parents but didn't believe us. We passed all night just crying, thinking the old lady was going to come to the room. I don't have an explanation to what I saw, and since that day I always thought I was a bit crazy. Like not totally sane. The fuck was she? Can someone tell me? Shadow woman looks like my mother. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade when my mom and I moved to France. We were staying in a small old apartment that was being rented by my grandparents. The place wasn't anything special, but it wasn't creepy either. There were 2 bedrooms. My grandparents slept across the hall, and I shared a bed with my mom since I was still a kid. No way my 8-year-old self was sleeping on the couch alone. Everything was normal, except after I went to sleep. That's when it started. Every now and then I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see shadow figures of a woman sitting at the edge of the bed. Always on my side of the bed. She had the exact same silhouette as my mother, would slowly move her hand like she was caressing my leg. I could move, so it definitely wasn't sleep paralysis. But I couldn't feel her caressing me, just see it. She didn't have eyes or even a face, really. Her entire form was pitch black, but I could tell she was looking at me. I never screamed or called out, which seems stupid now, but back then I was scared that if I moved she'd do something. So I just stared at her until I eventually fell back asleep. This happened more than once, and she never did anything besides stare and stroke the air near my leg, and I never told anyone. Eventually we moved back to our home country. I didn't think much of it after that, until something happened again. I was older then, maybe 6th grade. We're living in a shared house because money was tight, and my mom and I stayed with her sister and her husband, who's divorced now, and my cousin who's a year younger than me. My bedroom was next to my aunt and uncle's. My uncle had this habit of falling asleep with the TV on, which meant the hallway was always very softly lit from the screen. I always slept with my door open back then. One night I woke up as usual, looked toward the hallway, and standing there just outside my door was my mom. She wasn't moving, just watching me. Thanks to the TV light from my uncle's room, I could clearly make out her hair color and clothes. Exactly like my mother's, but her face, it was completely black. Like the light just stopped there. No features, no shine, just void. I was half asleep and the hallway was kind of dark. I just assumed she was checking on me, so I closed my eyes and decided to go back to sleep. That's when it hit me. She was on a night shift. She wasn't home. I opened my eyes again and she was gone. Still gives me chills when I think about it. Why did it look like my mom, and was it the same shadow woman from France? Never happened again after that. But to this day, I always close and lock my bedroom door before going to sleep. I woke up and saw something disturbing. Has anyone ever seen this? This happened when I was in 11th grade. Still don't know if it was a dream or something more. I'm really curious if anyone out there has ever seen or experienced anything similar. I woke up in the middle of the night, and the whole room was being lit by this bright, weird green light. It was similar to a flashlight. It was a directional light, like somebody was pointing at me. Completely lost, confused, and sleepy, I sat up and looked around just to notice the light was coming from my half-open door. When I looked toward the door, I saw something standing there. It didn't move at first. The door was half open, but you could see it. It was a tall figure. It looked like a very tall woman. Its skin looked like tree bark, and its eyes were the cause of this glowing green light. They weren't reflecting anything. They were actually glowing. It was peeking from the doorway, so I could only see one eye, and it was slowly moving its arm inside my room along the wall, like it was trying to get in, and it had claws. Then it noticed me and it screamed. The scream sounded like a woman, but not like a woman, if that makes sense. It was unsettling, and it had a weirdly deep tone. It showed me its full face, mouth open wide, and mouth wasn't glowing like the eyes. Just a black void. It raised both of its arms. It had hair, and it was floating upwards, like when you're about to be hit by lightning. Then I did the worst thing possible. I was so terrified I ducked under the covers. Yep, I could still hear it screaming, though. The screaming kept getting further away until it stopped. When I looked again, the green light was gone. So was the thing. The door was still half open, and everything was back to normal, like it never happened. I've never seen it since. I have no clue what it was, but it didn't feel like sleep paralysis since I could move and sit up and react. It felt real. Way too real. Could it be hallucinations? Well, but even then, would that thing react so vividly to my actions if it really all was? What I want to know is, has anybody seen something like this before? A creature with bark-like skin, glowing green eyes, and that strange floating hair. Can't just be me, right? I'm being warned in my dreams about my granddad's house. Okay, so since I was young, I would always have the same weird dreams of my granddad's house. And ever since I started talking about it again, wondering if anybody in my family was spiritually aligned, or anything about the house, the dreams have come back, but almost in a warning. The dreams are always the same. Me in his living room, sitting on the couch just underneath the picture of my gran that I never met, who died in the house. My granddad's dog would always be in the dreams, but she would sit at the living room door. The dreams would always start off almost normal, and then his dog would start barking. Never got up from the couch in my dreams or opened the door. Always felt like something was there standing outside it. Then the room would rather violently, and just I'd wake up. The room would rather violently. It's weird that I'd consistently have the same dreams as a child, around 7 to 10, and now I'm 19. And what's also weird is that I was told that my granddad and gran had a dog that would sit at the living room door and bark at it. Who, coincidence? I wasn't told that until recently. Since I was young, I was obsessed with the paranormal. So I've always believed that there's a possible stage between life and death. So you could say some of the feelings I felt of the house were just because I was consuming so much media that I was biased on the paranormal, but not really. I used to stay at his house a lot when I was young, with my cousins, and I had a really weird experience with sweets being thrown around the room. When my granddad came back into the living room to ask what we were screaming about, I told him, and he said his actual words are, "It's probably just your Granny Mary." Oh, wow, right? I like to think of it as she was playing with us, but I don't know. There was a time when me and my cousin were in his bedroom, where my grand died in, which I was told this very recently, and the TV moved. Really freaked me and my cousin out. And yeah, there's probably explanations to why it moved, but I don't know. I've had sleep paralysis in the house, and I used to sleepwalk a lot there, which I rarely did as a kid. My mom also told me recently that he used to have a parrot, and the parrot would always say "Margaret" at the same time every single day. My granddad would say, "That's Mary getting up." Yeah, not freaky at all. So that's the context. Really weird shit. There's probably more, like his back room and garden had a really weird energy about it. Also had really weird dreams about his garden. Now to what's been happening recently. Me and my friend were talking about all that type of shit like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I was telling her about my granddad's house and how I always felt a really weird energy. And that something's definitely going on there. Then I started to wonder if anybody else in my family was, like, into all that and could see stuff or was just spiritually aligned, so I asked my mom, and she said that before my gran was like that, kind of, and I'd have to ask my granddad if I wanted to know more. So on Friday, I was like, okay, I'm seeing my dad, which is tomorrow and Saturday. Maybe I could ask him. Tell him why, when I go to sleep, I have a dream that I'm in front of my granddad's house with my dad and granddad. I break the ice. My granddad was his usual self in the dream, until I asked him about my gran, and if she possibly was like that or could see things that others couldn't. His face drops and he gets mad. He was like, "Don't talk about that, don't ask me that," like shouting at me. Then I woke up and was like, wow, okay. Early Monday morning, and I kept waking up and going back to sleep. I had 2 dreams of the house. Dream 1. I was outside the house with my granddad again, and the way I would describe the house was that his normal front door was there, but then there was another door-shaped hole in the outside door, but with no door. He would start whistling, and my granddad whistles, by the way, just to say. Maybe not connected to the dream, but weird in this context of the dream. And there was like a high-pitched screeching noise coming from inside the house. Never heard that noise in the dream I used to have. It was like it was responding back to him, and then I woke up. Dream 2 again. I was with my granddad, and we were walking toward his house. Got in the same position we were in dream 1. He starts to whistle again, and there was a high-pitched screeching. However, this time I started to whistle, and we were almost whistling at the same time. The screeching got louder and closer. We stopped whistling for a second, then we whistled again, and suddenly this black orb comes zooming out through the door-shaped hole, throws my granddad in the air, like, okay. Now what? It turns and looks at me. I'm like pleading at this point, saying sorry. Then as soon as it tries to throw me or go through me, I woke up, and when I woke up, I immediately sat up and was like, what the hell was that all about? So yeah, I started to talk about weird, consistent dreams I used to have about my granddad's house when I was younger. I started to question it, and it's like I'm getting warned in my dreams to not question it, but like I want to question it. I'm practicing tarot right now, and I do think that I 100% should not ask my deck about it. Scared the skeptic. Mine first experience was when I was a kid. I've always felt like I was being watched. I've always ran from the feeling, even now that I do investigations. When I was in 5th grade, we went on a family vacation to the Crescent Hotel. My grandmother, aunt, and cousin and brother were all in tow. Us boys were obsessed with our new pocket knives and whittling anything out of anything. Upon checking in, we navigated the distressed creaky steps to the long hallway. After dropping our luggage, the adults wanted to enjoy a beverage in the basement bar. We sat outside of the bar, finishing our carvings. We soon ran out of material. Being brave young men empowered by our blunted pocket knives, we began to head to the room to get more soap. We did it on our own. Nothing would stop the work of Michelangelo and crew. Never forget the freedom of being scared, but protective. Every step was guided by a shooting eye of an expected encounter. I can still feel a heavy blanket of anxiety fueled by nostalgic, scary movies. When we creaked our way to the long hotel, we saw a man sitting in the windowsill, reading a book. His black slacks, black coat, and long-natured form looked cramped but relaxed, like being kissed by a cloud. We all stopped and paused and waved. His response was slow, as if in slow motion. A glimpse through a mirror as his reflection waved back. As we entered the room, my brother stayed by the door, never letting it close. My cousin and I ran to the bathroom. We had an immediate sense of fear, our instincts tearing at our guts to run, and run we did. We stumbled into the hall to look down and see the man had gone. No creak of a door, no footstep pressed into old carpet, nothing. Just a silent, long, empty floor, and every door was made of heavy wood and closed loud. You knew when somebody was moving about, and we knew we had just seen a ghost. We sprinted down the old wooden staircases, spilling into the bar panting. As we sputtered out what we had just seen, now under the protection of Grammy, we became excited. The bartender was a burly man and listened to us explaining what we had just seen, and I'll never forget. He reached up on a ledge, grabbed a picture, and said on the bar top, "You just seen Michael." He had described him to a T. That was the start of my paranormal journey. I got chased by someone. For context, I was visiting my grandparents in my village. I was around 13 maybe. Our house was a 2-story, but the steps were outside instead of inside. We had rented out the rooms on the ground floor. Our bathroom and kitchen were outside our actual house. The bathroom being behind the kitchen on the far left side. Just think a typical village house in Asia. At 3 a.m., I'm watching TV, as I usually have a hard time falling asleep. I was watching Kitchen Nightmares. I had the urgent need to pee. Everybody else was asleep, so I decided to go alone. I took my phone and quietly made my way outside. Once I neared my bathroom, I saw a man-shaped shadow on my far right, but it was dark, and my grandmother had a huge garden, so I just thought it was a plant. After peeing, when I came out, I saw the shadow had disappeared. So again, my rational brain thought I was just tired and sleepy. Once the garden was out of my vision and I crossed the kitchen, I heard loud footsteps. They're almost right behind me, getting faster and faster. My flight response came in, and without even looking back, I ran up the stairs to my home. Once I reached the balcony, I looked back to see a dark shadow with his slippers in hand slapping the kitchen wall. I heard my family waking up and coming outside to see what the commotion was about. I was ushered inside when my grandpa shouted at the figure to leave. I found out later that they thought it was the infamous drunken neighbor. I tried to fall asleep that night, but I couldn't, and hours later I heard my grandmother waking up and looking out the window. She went to sleep shortly after that. Complete silence for I don't know how long until I heard steps outside. It was circling my entire house. It stopped after 2 circles. I have no memory of falling asleep that night. The next morning, my family and I were all in the kitchen. They convinced me that it was the drunken neighbor who usually goes around at night, apparently. My grandmother said that she saw him standing outside when she looked through the window last night. She said that she could only see his lower half, which is weird, but was pretty sure that it was him. Our neighbor actually came around that evening. My grandmother's complaining to her about the drunkard when my neighbor looked confused. She said that's not possible. He had passed away 2 days before the incident due to alcohol. I have chills even thinking about this years later. What if I'd not run and gotten caught? Ugh. The time we went to an abandoned insane asylum, but ended up running for our life. This happened when I was a 33-year-old male, when I, a 33-year-old male, was 16. I didn't get my driver's license till I was 18, but my friend, let's call him Gary, got his. Now, we lived in a pretty small town in North Carolina, the type of town where all the high school kids, me included at the time, hung out in the Walmart parking lot. There was nothing better to do. So me and Gary had been friends since the beginning of high school. Met in one of our classes freshman year. Gary was into the spooky stuff, and so was I. Not long after getting his license, he comes to me with an idea. He tells me about some apparently old abandoned insane asylum a few towns over. Says it's back in the woods somewhere, isn't even visible from the road anymore. He wants us all to go out there in the middle of the night and check it out because it's supposed to be haunted by the patients that died there or something. Of course, nobody wants to go with him but me. So the following weekend, we decide we're going to sneak out and check this place out. It takes us a while to get there and figure out where exactly this place is. Finally, we find the place that we can park the car, follow the trail up to the asylum. We arrive at an old-ass building. Not sure if it was actually an asylum or just some building. It was definitely old and had plants growing all over it. It's possible a sign for the place was somewhere hidden in the brush. We walk into the building, there's no door. The inside's covered in graffiti, all kinds of stuff. Some kind of funny and others disturbing. The place definitely felt and looked spooky. We didn't end up staying long. We had been inside maybe 10 minutes or so, exploring the few rooms near the front of the building. Then a loud bang goes off. Not a gunshot bang, but like something really heavy fell to the floor. Me and Gary freeze. We turned to look at the doorway of the room the noise came from at the end of the hallway. A wheelchair slowly rolled into view from the room. And in this wheelchair is an old doll. And if you know what a Raggedy Ann doll is, then picture that. Well, that was enough for me and Gary. We decided to just head back to the car. We're walking back to the car through the trail, and we're both obviously scared, but neither of us want to show it or admit it. As we're walking, we hear something move around in the woods. Me and Gary don't speak a word to each other or even look at each other, but we both immediately take off running. Whatever it was that we had heard had started chasing us. We could hear it running in the woods next to us. And luckily, we made it back to the car and took off. Didn't look back and never saw what it was that was after us. For all we know, it's just some animal. But looking back at this now, I'm not sure what's scarier. The fact that we possibly ran into a ghost or spirit, or that maybe we aren't alone out there. Lived in a haunted apartment for a year. This happened to me, a 33-year-old male, in late 2016 till early 2017. I was in the military stationed in Tampa, Florida. I was 24 years old at the time. I had a roommate who was also in the military. We had been living together since we first moved out of the dorms on base. He got selected for deployment. I couldn't find a new roommate, so we broke the lease. I then got an apartment by myself. Nothing strange happened at first. It wasn't my first time living alone, but something about the place made me uncomfortable. It wasn't a cheap apartment, though, and I only had a year left till my contract was up, so I would separate from the military service. So I sucked it up and stayed, which was a bad decision. I started to get sleep paralysis. Never heard of it or experienced it before this. Naturally, I freaked out, and the longer I stayed in the apartment, the more frequent it would happen, till eventually it was an every night thing. I'd wake up unable to move and would see dark figures standing in my bedroom doorway. It would just stand there and stare at me, and had this melting look to it, as if parts of it were going to drip off of it. I went and seen a doctor. He told me about sleep paralysis. explained to me what it was and what it was. Probably just stress that was causing it. I believed him as everything he said lined up with what I was dealing with. However, soon afterwards, things escalated. I started feeling like something was trying to drag me off the bed at night when I'd wake, still unable to move or even make noise. If you have problems with sleep paralysis yourself, then you'll know what I mean. My voice would come out in croaks. When I would snap out of the paralysis, I'd be in my bed in my usual sleeping position as if nothing happened. Then one night all that changed. Instead of feeling like something was dragging me off the bed, I actually was dragged. Something grabbed my arm and pulled me down between the bed and the wall. My arm was stuck and I could feel a hand around my forearm. This was not sleep paralysis. I was wide awake both before and after the event. The last event that made me finally move out happened a few weeks before my lease was over. I had fallen asleep in my stomach, woke up to the same feeling, unable to move or speak, the feeling of someone watching me, then a pressure on my back. It felt like someone or something was sitting on my back, and I swear I could feel it breathing on the back of my neck. What snapped me out of the paralyzed state was a searing pain across my back. I immediately shot up and left the apartment. Had 3 long scratches like claws down my back. I ended up not breaking the lease and just crashed at a friend and coworker's place for a few weeks. Only ever went back to this apartment to grab my stuff. Spirit named my unborn baby. I'm currently 4 months pregnant with a baby boy. My husband and I have been having a difficult time trying to figure out a name for him. We lost some very close friends and family in the past few years, and they visit often. I just feel them around. Since I got pregnant with this baby, I have this constant feeling of something there and someone watching me. So last night I'm in the shower. I have that feeling. I started wondering if the soul of this unborn baby is visiting his soon-to-be family and feeling us out. I also had thought of my husband's best friend who was killed in October 2023, to which I said in my head, "Don't watch me in the damn shower." Got out and laid in bed and turned on the TV. Within 5 minutes, my Alexa started talking, the Wikipedia definition of the name in Hebrew. My husband's Jewish. My husband was outside, so I went out and asked if he did it. He wasn't sure what I was talking about, so after 5 minutes of freaking out, I finally told him, and he said, "Well, that's definitely a sign, and I guess we have a name now." It's crazy because it wasn't on our list, and it was so random that I thought about baby boy's soul or spirit maybe 10 or 15 minutes before this even happened. It's also interesting because we keep debating on naming our child after my husband's best friend that passed away, and then we got this. I'm still in shock. I'm able to communicate with those who have passed, so it's not something I'm completely unfamiliar with. But I'm not used to getting my own messages only for others. Alexa gave us my son's name last night. Has anyone ever experienced anything like this before? Are you brave enough to read this? Not for skeptics. I'm going to tell you about a paranormal life from the beginning of my life. From the cradle, I saw a monster or a demon. I remember it. Thought it was just my imagination or distorted dream. But I found some of my drawings from when I started drawing at age 2. And guess what? They were drawings of monstrous or demonic beings. And in my first house, I jumped on the bed and fell headfirst into the floor, as if somebody was pushing me and turning me over. One night, the lights were also kind of flickering. Yeah, very mild things. But the worst started when I moved at age 6. The first night I slept in my new house, I woke up convulsing and had to spend the whole night in the hospital with an oxygen tank. From then on at home, I've heard breathing and footsteps and whispers and things falling. Someone fiddling with knives or scissors. Everything was worse whenever I was alone at home, although paranormal activity also often occurred with other people in the house. but milder and less constant. Like the time somebody banging on the door from inside the basement, and spoiler, there was no one in the basement, or a locked door that was wobbling. The door and the lock as somebody were inside, like trying to get out or being in the living room and hearing a door, another one with a lock. I'd hear it sway, and when I went to look, the door was still, but the lock was gently shaking from the previous bangs. I also felt something was wrong with the basement. Also, one day while I was showering with my mother, we saw the black figure of a man pass behind the curtain. The house is half built upper floors, and on one of them there's a pile of sand. Well, footprints were always appearing in that pile of sand. I suspect that they belonged to my deceased grandfather, because the size of the footprint was the same size as my grandfather's foot. There's always something wrong with the house. The truth is that sometimes the paranormal activity would stop, only to kind of return stronger. Once I heard breathing, and I thought it was my imagination until I said, "Shut up," and the noise stopped. Every time I was alone, I would hear the sounds of someone playing with knives or scissors. Once I pretended a ghost was clapping, and I confessed to my mother that I was doing it myself. And one night I heard the same clapping sound coming from the kitchen while I was with my mother, and she said, "See, you're not making those noises. You're here." The noises stopped for a while, but when the paranormal activity resumed, it came back in full force. I'd always find the same knife pointing at me wherever I was. For example, doing something in the kitchen and feeling something and turning around, and the knife would be out of place pointing at me. Or once in the living room, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, I'd find the same knife a few inches from my head on the table. Though when that activity stopped, a new one would start, waking up with scratches on my back and bloody, almost Freddy Krueger-like. They thought it was because of an animal, and I didn't have one at the time. They said I was scratching myself, but in truth I bit my nails too much. What did I scratch myself with? And besides, I slept clothed, and the marks always appeared in my back. Clearly something in that house didn't love me and was threatening my life. And more things I don't remember, but I know happened. Other paranormal things. Dreaming about my grandfather telling me something, and days later I realized what he said and what he meant. That my grandmother killed him. I asked. My family confirmed it. Also, when the person I cared about the most died, I kept feeling like I'd swallowed ashes. And hours later I found out that that person had passed away and was cremated. When I was gathering her things from the house to take them with me, one of their music players started playing by itself, playing a love song. And the most recent thing that happened to me was walking past a room and seeing my static reflection as if my figure were still inside the room and not where I really was. And so far, my entertaining life